Hello and welcome to Host Planet Bitesize, the podcast brought to you by Host Planet and Hostfully. My name's James Varley, the founder of Host Planet, and our goal is to share everything you need to know about buying and managing short-term rentals. Today's guest is Shivan Vinod Kira from Linkbase. He's got 5 tips on how to boost profits without buying more properties. I really love tip number 1, and if you're not doing this, you should start right now. Are you looking to streamline your operations and amaze your guests? Look no further than Hostfully. With their top-rated property management software, you can automate reservations, payments, and guest communication all in one place. Plus, their award-winning digital guidebooks provide personalized recommendations and essential information, ensuring your guests have an unforgettable stay while helping you achieve those all-important outstanding reviews. Join the thousands of satisfied property managers who trust Hostfully to grow their business. Visit hostfully.com to elevate your short-term rental game today. Shivan, welcome to Host Planet Bitesize. Thanks so much for joining us. You've got 5 tips to share on how to boost profits without buying more properties. So take it away with tip number 1.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James, for having me. And I just want to give a little disclaimer here as well. The 5 tips, the 5 juicy tips, if I may say, are coming from the perspective of that you've already gotten a pricing software like Price Labs, and you're already doing everything you can on that side to make sure that your pricing is nice and aligned with the market pricing. And you already have very good photos for your Airbnbs, because that's very, very important. If you've already done those 2 things, here's tip number 1, how you can actually increase profitability without going out of your way to acquire a new unit. Well, the first tip is to actually capture guest data. This is extremely important, because every time a guest comes and books through a booking platform on any of your properties, you're actually paying a big channel fee. And so if you're able to build that relationship with your guest, and you're actually able to collect their information so that you can market to them later on and make them book directly with you, that's going to save you a lot of money. Not just that, you're not competing with that demand supply on those booking platforms. You're going to get your guests anyway from those booking platforms. And this is an additional booking. That's the number 1 driver for increasing profitability. And there are 2 ways you can collect information in the first place. First is you can collect that through a custom form. Ask a few questions from your guests. Guests are happy to fill that out. Ask for their email address, ask for their name, ask for the reason for travel, important things like that. And then if you are able to have a splash page Wi-Fi so that you're collecting email information from not just the booker, but everybody else who's booked your property as well.
Yeah, fantastic tip. And once you've got all these email addresses, what do you do with them?
Well, the best thing you can do is you can pop them up in a little marketing campaign. Have emails between 4 to 7. Do it in a way where you're sending those emails out to that guest over a period of 8 months to 12 months. Over a period of that year, they occasionally get those emails from you. You're building trust, you're building loyalty, you're letting them know you have other properties to offer, and you keep bringing them back. So if you keep them engaged, there's a highly likelihood that they will, use you to book with you rather than go all the way up and find another property on another booking channel if they're coming to the same place.
Yeah, it's a great tip. Yeah. And another cool way that I saw of gathering email addresses at one property was they had a QR code on the fridge and just said, fill in the form and, we'll pick a competition winner each month or something like that. So if you're trying to gather those email addresses, that's quite a cool way to do it. And then you can use a tool like you were saying there, maybe MailChimp or MailerLite, sign up. They've got a lot of great free tools that you can use, and you can create those regular newsletters and keep marketing to your guests, because your past guests is probably the easiest potential direct bookers. Great tip number 1 then, Shivan. What's tip number 2?
Tip number 2 is everybody who's coming into your properties already, well, they have already given you their budget for what they're going to spend for their trip in terms of accommodation. But there are a lot of other things that they're going to be doing at the trip. And so what you could do is you can enhance that accommodation slightly and start making extra revenue if you offer upsells. So tip number 2 is if you're not doing upsells and you think, well, it's going to add a lot of work, hear me out when I say this. You absolutely can offer upsells like early check-in and late checkout. And if you offer just these two upsells and maybe throw in another one like a mid-stay clean for longer bookings, you can actually generate close to $100 per property per month, which means that if you have a portfolio of about 5 properties, as little as 5, you can actually generate over $6,000 completely, which goes to your bottom line and boosts profitability all the way 100%. So if you're not offering upsells as simple as early check-in, late checkout, I'm here to tell you that guests are happy to pay for that extra bit of convenience, and they will pay for an early check-in for an hour, a couple of hours, and you can actually make money from that.
And all you need to do, really simply, is to tell your guests that they can do this.
Absolutely.
Simple as that. So tip number 2 then, the direct upsells. What's tip number 3, Shivan?
Well, tip number 3 is again related to upsells. And this is something that you can easily do. And I would recommend everybody around the world to do this. So as you know, TripAdvisor is a pretty big platform across the world. And TripAdvisor actually has a platform called Viator. So if you're not aware, check out Viator. And what it does is that you literally put your property location in there, and it tells you all the local experiences that are available, that are bookable. All you got to do is you got to throw in a link into the chat, tell your guests, hey, they can book these experiences. And guess what? If they book it, everything is handled by TripAdvisor's Viator platform, but you make a commission from TripAdvisor. So if you're not doing it, perhaps look at it, because as tip number 3, this is something you can do in 3 steps. That's why it was tip number 3. It's a simple, easy process. You sign up, you throw in the link, and then you wait for your guests to book from you.
Yeah, and all you have to do is just provide that link to your guests. Again, it's similar to tip number 2. Okay, then we've had 3 tips. What's the 4th tip, Shivan?
Okay, the 4th one is slightly juicier, actually. It gets better. So there are certain things that you may be doing already, which you might be incurring some costs on, but there are ways you can actually save money by automating some of your operations. So the 4th tip is simply on automation. And I'm not talking about some crazy automation here. I'm just talking about simple things like this, that if you have specific types of bookings, like for example, I know a lot of hosts that do not ask guests who've booked on Airbnb to verify their IDs, but they want guests who've booked on other platforms perhaps to go through an ID verification, just so that they can make sure that, you know, there's not going to be any chargebacks later on, or there's not going to be any issues later on, given Airbnb has really good policy with air cover. Now, a lot of times, because it's hard to set this up, and sometimes it's a manual process, guests aren't able to always just go ahead and verify their ID because they get this link, but they may not click on it. You know, you may not check it, and then disasters do happen. So if you just automate your processes and use something called a guest experience platform, and just make sure that it's a completely rules-based guest journey where the check-in instructions only go out if they've done the steps that you've set out for specific conditions. In that scenario, you just avoid all the headache, you avoid all the extra work, and you also avoid all those chargebacks that may still happen if you're trying to do it manually. There are other things that you can automate. Sometimes you send a whole long paragraph with check-in instructions on how to check in into a property. I know a lot of properties that are actually quite complex to check in into. And you write a very beautiful message, but again, when the guest is at the door, they're saying, hey, how do I check in? And then if you're away, you still gotta take time out of your day to respond. Not just that, if you're actually away and you're not able to respond in time, you may lose a star or two, and that drops your rating, gets you lesser bookings. So you can avoid all of those things by just automating your operations, having step-by-step, picture-by-picture check-in instructions. Again, use a simple tool like a guest experience platform that connects with your property management software, and automate all those things.
Yeah, automation is fantastic. You probably won't avoid all those questions though, because even with automation, I found that some guests just don't really pay attention to links or digital guidebooks, and they still want to call you and say, "Hey, I haven't had the check-in instructions." Well, you have actually. You just haven't read your messages. But yeah, automate as much as you can. You will save time and ultimately save money. All right, then, Shivan. Final tip number 5.
Well, tip number 5 is very related to tip number 4, which is Don't try to do all of these things manually. Save yourself time, save yourself money. Do it through something called a guest experience platform. So you can search that up online. What does that term mean? Which companies are providing that? Obviously, my background is developing a guest experience platform, being part of Linkbase. But use a platform, use a tool that's actually going to save you money, that's going to actually, in fact, make you money, automate your operations, make sure that you're collecting data, make sure that you have everything compiled in one single spot so that you can focus on increasing revenue from every single property and saving time. Because eventually what that does is that not only all your properties become more profitable and you're making more money off of them, but then you have more time to scale your portfolio. And that's exactly when you should go out and scale.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, then. So 5 tips we've got: capture the guest data, focus on those direct upsells, the simple one being early check-in and late checkout, use Viator, automate as much as you can, and use a guest experience platform. 5 brilliant tips. Thank you, Shivan. Tell us more about Linkbase and where people can find out more information.
Well, I'll tell you this simply. If you're a host or a property manager listening to this and you want to do all of those things, then you've got to use Linkbase, because Linkbase is a platform that ties all of these things together, whether it is automating your locks, having step-by-step check-in instructions, creating a rules-based guest journey where you can verify your guests at certain times. You can get them to sign a damage deposit and all those different things. You can get them to sign different waivers. You can do all of those things and create that digital guest journey, which is fully branded for yourself. That's what Linkbase does. That's what a guest experience platform does. And in order for you, if you're wanting to, look what Linkbase does, you can find us at www.linkbase.ca. That's linkbase.ca. And then right on the top, you can book a meeting, and we'd be happy to look at your portfolio and see if there's a way we can help you out.
Fantastic. We'll put a link to Linkbase and also your LinkedIn as well in the show notes. Shivan, thank you so much for joining us on Host Planet Bitesize and for sharing those 5 tips.
Thank you so much for having me, James. I'm a big fan of Host Planet, and I really appreciate you having me here today.
Great to chat to Shivan there from Linkbase and hear those 5 profit-boosting tips. Capturing your guest data and offering those simple upsells will undoubtedly make you more revenue. All right, that's it for today's episode. Remember, this series is sponsored by Hostfully, and if you'd like to try their PMS or digital guidebook, head to hostfully.com. For more free education, tips, and trends from the STR industry, visit hostplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode. Until next time, happy hosting.